Today we have a just a dear friend, someone that has been very influential in my life. Part of the reason why I'm here in the Central Conference is as after eh, knowing that this was a possibility, I went to her and I asked her, okay, tell me, is this something that I can do? Is this something that I should do? And what are the pros? What are the cons? And we had a couple of hour conversation, and she was very helpful in discerning my role here in the Central Conference. She is a pioneer on her own. She's a trailblazer, someone that is very loved and respected. And this is my colleague, the superintendent of the Midwest Conference, Tammy Swanson Draheim. Welcome, Tammy.
Thank you, Danny. You are so kind when you share that. Oh my goodness, I feel so honored that you even had that conversation with me and that we're here today. And it's been such a rich relationship, hasn't it, over the decades, I think, now that I think about it. Yeah.
That is for sure. For people that don't know you, Tammy, tell us a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit about your family. People think that because we're superintendents, we have no family and no life. So please prove us otherwise.
Well, it's kind of ironic because a part of my extended family is right there in the Central Conference with you, Danny, and I'm kind of proud of your associate superintendent, who happens to be my brother, and church planter David Swanson, who happens to be my nephew. But my immediate family, they are amazing. Of course, we have Kelly and I, we have two sons, and between the two of them, we have three precious grandchildren. And I have to tell you, being a grandma has rocked my world. There is nothing like being a grandma. They are adorable. So we have a little girl who's going to turn 5 tomorrow. Her name's Garnet, I know. Little Briley, who's 3, turned 3 recently, and Huxley, who's going to be a year in July. And so, yeah, they are a ray of sunshine for us, for sure.
Well, you certainly show them off enough. I have seen so many other pictures. And of course, as our audience will see, there are cutie pies. You also provide not only are you a superintendent, you're also our chair for the Council of Superintendents. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But as a superintendent, what is your job tell us about the states that you oversee and how many churches. Give us a little roundup of your conference.
All right. So Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, Colorado, Wyoming, and half of Missouri, because Danny and I together share the state of Missouri. For some reason, no one trusted either one of us with the whole state. I don't understand that, Danny, but it's a pleasure to share a state with you. So those are the states in the conference. There's about 100 churches, between established churches and church plants, that are still gathering, even in this awkward time. And yeah, it's a joy. I love serving our churches and our pastors, as I know you do, Danny. What a pleasure.
So what does a superintendent do? You and I did a presentation to the 3430 team. And we took a couple of hours to talk about, so, you know, we don't have 2 hours, but overall, what do you see, I know that a lot of our minorities call us bishops, and we're not bishops in the way that we have legislative and executive powers, but we are overseers in a sense. So what do you see your role, the main characteristics of your role to be?
Wow, well, it's been a while since we did that, but I'll just try and say in some short phrases, maybe. I would say the direction, the vision and mission of the conference, which is always done collaboratively with the pastors and leaders in our conference, but nonetheless, I'm responsible for shepherding that and moving that forward. Leading staff and shepherding staff, and it's a pleasure. I have a phenomenal staff team who helps us accomplish the goals that we have. You know, obviously there's the administrative pieces like budgeting and annual meetings and all the things that go into the financial aspects and so forth. There's shepherding of pastors, and that would be both through things like the credentialing process, as well as care and discipline and providing resources for learning. There's working with the churches and leadership, and that comes in many forms. Obviously, it comes in terms of helping them through searches. And, I'm sure, Danny, you like me have oftentimes been asked to step in when there's conflict and to help resolve things, to resource our churches. And so, yeah, if you like a job where you wear a lot of hats, this is the job for you, because we do wear a lot of hats in this job.
I remember, Tammy, that, and I call you Tammy because you're my friend. I know you're a superintendent.
Oh, please, yes.
That when I stepped into this role, I was a pastor before that. Coming into the role, I wanted to continue to be Pastor Danny. And I even said, you can call me Pastor Danny, not doctor, not reverend, just call me Pastor Danny. I want to be open and approachable. But I realized that people saw me differently, and the optics were differently, and I was seen bestowed with all this power now. How was your transition from being a pastor to a superintendent?
That's a great question, because one of the things for me coming into this is, pastoring a local church. When you shepherd the vision and mission for a local church, you're working with people right on the ground, and you are able to get pretty immediate investment in terms of the mission. And so here I was thinking, wow, what's this is going to look like for a whole conference that's over such a large region? And fortunately, been able to figure some of that out through some of the same ways, but it's just required a lot more gathering of people together. But I liken sort of the shepherding of pastors to what you might think of between the difference of being a shepherd and a rancher. And that I'm more interested in making sure that all of my pastors are well cared for through networks, through relationship, through opportunities that we can provide for development. But I know that I can't personally pastor 300 people in a really intimate way. I am always available to my pastors, and I love the conversations I get to have with them. And I'm always there in a crisis. But it is more of a, how can we make sure that everybody is being well cared for, as opposed to being the direct provider, as often we do in one geographic area with a group of people. So I think that's, a big difference that I see.
Yeah. Tell me, you were born into the covenant. Your parents were part of the covenant. Is that correct?
So my parents joined a covenant church in California, not, within a couple years before I was born. So yes, I am the first one, just truly covenant from the get-go.
Yeah. Well, and you have had, so you were you were part of the youth group of Doug Stevens, who happens to be one of my mentors as well. And he loves to he loves to flaunt that, by the way. I hope he watches this and says, yeah, that's right.
He loves to tell stories too, Danny. So don't ever put him on and ask him about me, because he's got some humdingers to tell.
Well, we all do, Tammy.
Yes.
That's a different story. Tammy, one of the things that was that I was very grateful for, as I mentioned when I was introducing you, I didn't know if I wanted to do this job because it seems daunting. It seems overwhelming. I love people. I just want to be released to loving people and caring for people. And there's a lot of admin work that goes into this. There's a lot of planning. There's a lot of just proactiveness. And, Latinos are not known for being proactive. We're excellent being reactive, and we're great under pressure. But proactiveness, and I shouldn't say all Latinos, I should say Guatemalans. But when I sat down with you in Kansas City, I believe it was, and we sat down and I asked you, tell me about this. You gave me some really great feedback and some great things about what to think about, looking at the budget, asking the right questions, and I really appreciated that. The question that I wanted to ask you is, in being a superintendent, what do you think is often misunderstood about our position?
Yeah, I think it's often misunderstood that we have some inherent power or authority. And in the case of a superintendent, you are leading purely from influence and relationship. When I go into a church, I bring the best advice that I have based on all of my experiences and so forth. But it's up to the church whether or not they're going to, really follow that advice. And I could give you a couple of examples where, that didn't go so well for the churches. They chose to really take an independent direction. With pastors, I think, we have a little bit more accountability there, obviously. But I think that, people might think we have more, you go into a search committee, you can't tell them what to do. You can help guide them in their process. But I've had people say, well, why didn't you make them do this or that? Well, that's not my role. So it is a very different role. You give your best guidance and advice and counsel and help churches, but you don't tell them what to do.
You is chair of the Council of Superintendents, which is, it's an admin position, but it's also a great honor. I mean, you are doing a great job, and you were just reelected to do that again. Tell us, about your role as the chair of the Council of Superintendents.
Yeah, Danny, because no one else wants to do it, right? No, it's a lot of work, but it's also great joy to be able to bring together our group of 15 people and to lead the conversations and structure them and help to determine what the agenda is going to look like. And so, that's really a joy. I also love our council. I mean, when we talk about how do you move into a job where there's no really clear job description, the ways in which we can help each other and resource each other through best practices. And it's just a beautiful fellowship and wonderful friends. We have beautiful friendship across the council. So we care for each other well. We make sure to take time and pray for each other. Once a year, we have a retreat together where we spend time in the scriptures, leading each other. Danny did a fantastic job this year in leading us through a chapter of Ruth in his very unique, gifted way. And it was so much fun and so meaningful and prophetic. And but we get to help lead each other and be a part of each other's spiritual nurture, as well as, how do we do this job that we've been called to really well and serve our people well.
One of the things that I found to be very interesting was how well equipped we are with the individuals that we have as superintendents. They're all different. None of us are the same. And we have certain characters, obviously, right? That
what do you mean, Danny?
Some trade secrets that we're not going to divulge in public. But also, just the expertise that people bring. I know that as a superintendent, I would not have been able to do my job if I did not have these 10 people. There's 11 of us, plus 4 executive ministers with our president. And that I could call on, and I've called on you and said, what is this? Or what are you doing as far as this? And Howard has spent a couple of days here in Chicago with me, just going over systems and saying, well, there's a lot of things here that you don't need. And Paul Wilson, in the beginning also helped discern some of this. And as far as showing me what a budget even looked like, because there's not a training guide for superintendents. So we kind of brought in with certain expectations that we will be able to administer and to care for our pastors and do that. And some of us do that very organically, but wow, the learning curve is pretty steep. I'm going to be starting my 3rd year in September. And I'm finally getting the hang of it. So,
Well, Danny, I think that first term is all about, making all the relationships and so forth. And you can do things, and you've created some new initiatives and you've led the conference so well. But I feel like in your 2nd term, you're just continuing to build on the groundwork that you laid in your 1st term. It just gets better and better. And, relationships grow deeper and deeper. So, yeah, that's a reality.
Well, I appreciate you being a mentor to me and walking with me. That is one of the privileges that I have, and I appreciate that.
Hey,
You being
that's mutual, Danny. You don't get to just say that and not say. You have mentored me even before you became superintendent. You've been in my conference helping me, even just in growing and strengthening our Latino ministries. You've been instrumental in that and being involved in strategic conversations. And so I'm really grateful for you, Danny. We mentor each other, right?
Thank you, Tammy. Thank you. But you are Evelyn Johnson was the first female superintendent. You are leading it with such grace. We all could learn from that. Tell me a little bit about your passion for women ministries. Now, the Covenant, we are an egalitarian denomination. Can you tell us what that means? Tell us what that is. Some of us, egalitarian sounds like eggs. What is that? How do you eat that? Do you eat that with tortillas or do you eat that with bread? What is it?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would say that we are, that's an aspirational goal, that we're egalitarian, which is just believing that God created male and female in his image, that he has gifted each individual, male or female, with gifts, and that he's called us into places of leadership without regard to our gender, but according to our gifts and our call. So I think that's a high value of the Covenant Church. And it's not, I actually am really careful when I talk about this, because I teach on this topic a lot, to say, it's really not a women's issue. This is a church issue. In fact, this is a kingdom of God issue.
Amen.
Right? So the whole church benefits when women and men serve together in this beautiful, reconciled way that demonstrates the work of Jesus on the cross and what we're called into, to live into. So I think that's why the Covenant Church embraces egalitarianism, so that we can more fully live out the gospel and demonstrate that to those around us. But we have a ways to go in that. We have quite a ways to go in that, practically speaking. Yeah.
One of the things that you trailblaze in is about being intentional about opening up spaces for our sisters that are in ministry. We have many pastors in our denomination. We need many more. But you do that out of, obviously, your personal experience as a female pastor and now as a superintendent. Tell us some of the ways in which you're nurturing, opportunities.
Yeah. And by the way, I hope it's not too loud in the background. We have a massive thunderstorm happening here right now.
Do you really? No, I don't hear it at all.
Good.
The garden is quite beautiful, though.
Yes. So some of the ways we do that very intentionally, I would start, before I'd even say anything about an initiative, I'd say it's a cultural piece. And that if your culture isn't established to grow in this area, it doesn't matter what initiatives you put into place. You've got to do the hard work of, enculturating this. So, everything we do, just from workshops at annual meetings to speakers to our ministerium meeting, everything we think about having a good balance of ethnicity and gender, how we function as a comms and what we will approve going forward. Simple things like you have a co-pastor couple leading in the church. We do things like, well, instead of saying Jeff and Tiffany Flanagan, I would say pastors Tiffany and Jeff, because people automatically assume if you say Jeff and Tiffany that Tiffany is the spouse. But if you say Tiffany and Jeff, they know. So those are just some cultural things. We have goals that we have put into place. Our staffing, we're staffed around our initiatives. And I would say that gender righteousness and racial righteousness are probably the two significant justice priorities for us in the conference. So in terms of gender, we have a retreat called Exploring Call. We've put it on several times, where we invite women that our pastors have identified as potentially gifted and maybe experiencing the movement towards a vocational call. We'll call them together for 3 days and we'll pour into them with mentors and people who are there. We do biblical teaching on gender equality. They have time of spiritual formation, sitting with a director and doing exercises and just being able to hear from God apart from everything else. And it's been really exciting. We've had women who have come out of that, who are now in seminary. We have women who have come out of that that are now leading in the church. So really exciting to see how God has used that. We also—
That I heard.
I heard.
That I heard.
It is crazy right now, absolutely crazy. Oh my goodness. We have these Call, Gifted, and Here to Stay retreats that we do, which is for all women clergy and women from our Exploring Call retreats who have identified a call to ministry. And we get together and we have fun, we have relevant teaching. It might be on preaching or leading or things that are specific to women. We might have panels and asking questions and having a lot of fun together as part of it, just to build that fellowship and to know you're not in it alone and to be able to share the journey together. And then we also have Thriving Vocationally cohorts. And so we have one in the East and one in the West, and those meet with groups of women on each side to really delve into fellowship and development and do that in a pretty intentional way. So those would be kind of like the three main initiatives that we do, but there are a lot of things culturally that we do that also help to move things forward. Yeah.
Thank you. I've certainly learned a lot from that. And we have started some of those initiatives. We're going to be copying you because why invent the wheel when the wheel is doing fine? And we want in the Central Conference to empower, but we also want to. There's many women that are on the margins in the periphery that don't quite know whether this is something they can do, they should do, and having strong leaders as yourself, as Evelyn Johnson, as some of the people that have done incredible jobs, gives us the opportunity to say, there are women that are doing incredible things in ministry. And of course, the Latino community has its own challenges because we come from a very chauvinistic background. But I can tell you, we elected our first female president for ALIPE, the Spanish association, the Latino association, and who's Juana Nesta.
Oh, yes.
And we're just, our Asian American Commission also has the president, and she is the elected president of the Ethnic Commission, or the Mosaic Commission that we call now. So very happy for that, and we have so much more to go. But thank you for, you're known as among many things that you do well, you're known as the women ministry initiatives, and I'm known as the pro-immigration person. And it's things that affect us whether we want them or not. We probably don't have a choice in being advocates for that. It's just who we are.
And I think, Danny, in my conference that I would, people would see me as having a strong heart for racial righteousness as well as gender righteousness. I don't separate those out. We give the same amount. I could list for you the initiatives on the racial righteousness side too. We give the same amount of attention to those areas as well, because I believe in the same way, this is a gospel issue, right? This is about people created in the image of God, and the church isn't going to live out its full purpose until we have found equity and righteousness for people of color as well as for women. And those two are really important for us in the Midwest Conference, in moving that forward.
Well, as we're going through COVID, and how, is there anything that has surprised you about the church in this time of COVID-19?
The generosity of the church. Oh my goodness. We have a small group of people who have been bringing the needs before our constituency. And we have churches that really haven't been impacted at all negatively financially. And then we have churches that have had a huge impact. So helping our churches to realize, if you haven't had an impact, there are churches that are struggling, and the generosity of our churches to give to that crisis fund so that those who don't have resources can have access to resources has been profound in my book. They've really, right now we're sitting on some funds that haven't even been expended yet because we're prepared to meet those needs because of the generosity of churches in our conference who've responded to that. And the group of pastors that are facilitating that, I'm not doing that with them. I have a staff person on the team, but it's a diverse group. I think that's really important that there's diversity in any group that makes decisions around money and finances and who gets what, so that it's fair and equitable. And so I'm really proud of the work that they've done and how they've engendered the giving and the generosity of our churches. Yeah, that's a big plus for me in all of this.
I know that you have many, but can you give me one of your favorite memories in the denomination?
Oh my gosh, it'd probably be something with you, Danny. One of the things that I appreciate about Danny, not only your wisdom, you have a prophetic voice, which you deliver in good humor, which makes me laugh. And I think humor is actually a spiritual gift. It is a gift from God. And I just love that about you, Danny. I've learned so much from you, but always within just this good humor that you have. So one of the things Danny has done, I'm telling on him a little bit, when we're together, it's a council of superintendents. It started out where there'd be some kind of treat that would be out on the table. And I'd get back to my hotel room at night, going through my briefcase/bag, and there'd be like treats in there, like extra pieces of chocolate or whatever. And it came to pass that Danny was kind of putting things in my bag. And then I'd start to catch him at it. And pretty soon the things that went in my bag got larger and more cumbersome, and knickknacks were going into my bag. And all these. At any rate, it was quite humorous. Sometimes I caught them while he was doing it or shortly after. Sometimes I get back to my hotel room and I'd know that surprise in my bag came from Danny. But there's a lot of fun on the
yeah, you have told on me. And of course, we have to be very good friends for me to be able to do that. I don't do that to just anybody. I think that my favorite memory of you in the denomination is at Gather, 2 years ago, exactly around this time, 2 years ago, you spoke this incredible word. And wow, I was supposed to speak the next day, and then Curtis Ivanov was supposed to be the last day. But you raised the bar so high. Your word was just right on. It was just a great word. It was powerful. And one thing I did not know, that in spite of all of our years of being friends, is that you were adopted. And that blew my mind completely. But you were just such a great example of who the covenant is, and made me very proud of you. And of course, you made me get my head in, I had to bring it even harder the next day, because after that amazing sermon, yeah, you did an amazing job, Tammy.
Thanks, Danny, that you did bring it the next day. It was so good. That was a great memory for me too, because we had 3 superintendents that spoke at that annual meeting, and I don't think that had ever happened before. And it was so wonderful to see the difference. And Curtis also gave a really compelling sermon and very meaningful. Curtis, who speaks in stories so much. Danny, you used so much humor, and that was just really rich for me too. Yeah, good memory.
And I think that what was really amazing about that was also that, I built on what you did, and Curtis built on what I did. I remember off passing saying, the Bible says that Jesus is the bread of life, but I rather think of him as the tortilla of life, because it's so much tastier. So, but that was just, that wasn't prepared. That was just, passing. As you know, I prepare everything,
You have a gift, Danny.
Curtis, took it to the next level the next day. He goes, Jesus is the fried bread of life. And, he's from Alaska. And yeah. So thank you for all these memories. Let me invite you to leave us with one last thought. And what is your hope for the church, especially during the time of COVID? this time of racial unrest, you know, we can have a whole new conversation. I know that your heart hurts for all this, you know, injustice that's been going on racially. You can tell us a little bit about that if you want. What is your hope in the church, for the church during this difficult time, especially for our African American brothers and sisters?
Yeah. Well, you know, being on this journey for a while, I consider the journey towards racial righteousness a marathon and certainly not episodic. And so I look at the people whose hearts are opening to conversations that they have not been open to before. That brings me some hopefulness. Danny, we are doing a book study right now in our conference on rediscipling the white church. And we had chosen 20 leaders who have been on this journey for a while to pair together male and female to host groups. We opened up our registration and it filled up to 100 immediately. And
wow.
I just look at that as a sign of people are ready
Changing
for the
times.
conversation. It's caught their attention. So how do we take this moment and not allow it to just fall to the wayside eventually and get back to normal, whatever that is? How do we continue to leverage this to move forward in meaningful ways? So I think this COVID season has actually provided some opportunity to do that in a different way. Normally we do a Midwest Conference Sankofa. We just did our first Journey to Mosaic. We have a number of initiatives that we do in our conference. But, you know, here we are in this season where you can't go anywhere or do anything. So what do? You pivot and you start having meaningful conversations on Zoom about these really important topics. We're having more one-on-one conversations. My hope for the church is that this moment won't be lost. We won't get over this moment, so to speak, that it will be more of a beginning point than a place that we'll look back on and pat ourselves on the back. But it'll be, this is when we realize our eyes were open and some of the blinders fell off. So that would be my hope. Yeah.
Thank you. And on behalf of our conference, thank you for the direct and indirect contributions you've made to me personally, and just being an incredible, just the covenant personified in who we are and what we can do. Blessings to you and Kelly. You are both very much loved.
Oh, thank you, Danny. We love you very much, and I'm so grateful for our partnership. And I would just say to your pastors who might be watching this, what a treasure you have in Bishop Danny Martinez. He is really a profound influence in my life, and I'm so grateful for you, Danny. Thank you for your friendship. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tammy. Blessings to you.
Blessings.